Welcome to this week's edition of Outdoors Online, a weekly webcast produced by the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. I'm your host, Tom Jensen. This is the week that we begin our annual fishing reports. It's only fitting we start with a place that has some open water, that being the Missouri River Tail Race. Dave Fryda is the fisheries supervisor in Riverdale, manages the Missouri River system basically from the Montana border all the way down to Stanton. So he's got lakes and rivers as part of his district. Dave, been an odd spring, I guess, so far, weather-wise.
Yeah, they all seem to be odd at some extent, so.
Well, we've had warm weather, we've had temperatures in the 70s, we've had snow and wind and everything else.
Yep.
Dave, your district is probably affected more than any other district by snowpack, by that mountain snowpack, I guess, especially Lake Sakakawea. How has that been this year?
Well, we rely both on mountain snowpack and plains precip, as they're both kind of critical. You know, mountain snowpack tends to drive us where we're going to be for the summer for a high, a rise, but you know, typically we don't get the mountain snowpack in time for the spawning season.
Right.
To see that critical rise. That's a lot more dependent on plain snowpack, but as you know, both of those are pretty poor this year. Mountain snowpack is not very good. Plain snowpack is essentially non-existent runoff. So yeah, it's going to be a change from the last few years, definitely.
Okay. Last year about this time, Dave, it seemed like the tail race was the place to be for fishermen. Walleye were going crazy and things. How is it this year so far?
This year's been all right. It's definitely not what it was, you know, 5-6 years ago, prior to the flood and during the flood, but no, it's been better than it has been the last couple of years. So
all right,
it's been fairly decent. We had a lot of smelt produced last year in Sakakawea that entrained all summer and fall and even into the winter coming through the dam, so there was a lot of fish gorging on those. So.
Right, so this should be a pretty good year, well, let's say from here to Stanton.
Yeah, it should start to improve. At least it appears to have. You know, the fish have grown some up here. There's a little bit better size, condition looks a little better. So.
Let's move up on the other side of the dam now, Dave, and talk about Lake Sakakawea. Last couple of years have been very, very good. It made a nice rebound in things. How are things going to be this year?
The fish populations are in very good condition. Our forage is the highest we've indexed. Our smelt abundance is extremely high last summer due to really good reproductive effort last spring. So we have a lot of young smelt out there, high abundance. Our fish populations are doing very good. How the bite pans out, you know, is somewhat dependent on what the water does and how abundant and easy that forage is to be, you know.
Right.
So.
Now your smelt spawn is kind of dependent on water levels. You need very steady water levels?
Yeah, we need, during that mid-April to mid-May, it's pretty critical to have, you know, rising water, smelt spawn, and extremely shallow. But, you know, this year it's not, at least on Sakakawea, it's not that critical because we had a huge year class of smelt produced last year and we have very good forage abundance. So, you know, this year it's not that critical if we don't see a rise, which I don't think we will. And, you know, it's more Oahe and Fort Peck are favored during that spawning period this year too. So,
all right.
Yeah.
You've got a very wide variety of species in your district, Dave, and let's go through them one by one and talk about them. Let's start with walleye.
Our walleye population is very strong in Sakakawea right now. It's very high abundance, probably I think around the fourth or fifth highest abundance we've documented since since our surveys began post dam. A lot of fairly young year classes that are very strong, 2010s and 11s. There's going to be a lot of fish in the 14 to 17, 18 inch range. A very, very high abundance of those fish in the system right now, and they're in good condition. So there should be a lot of fish available, you know, that are that desirable harvest size for anglers.
Sure. Starting to see some monster northern pike in Lake Sakakawea.
Yeah, we're seeing some better size structure from those 09s. We haven't seen the real boom in real top end pike like we did on Oahe, but yeah, they're growing. They haven't grown as fast as they did on Oahe. we also have a bunch of young pike coming up too. It appears from the last year or two we had another reproductive effort. So there's small pike mixed in too, but overall our pike abundance is very good.
Perch seemed like they made a nice comeback on Lake Sakakawea. They even provided a little bit of forage for a while.
Yeah, perch on Sakakawea and pretty much the entire Missouri River system, that's kind of what you got to look at them as. They're just forage. They never do attain large enough sizes really to be attractive to anglers. So, you know, again, after the water came back in '09, we had a big pulse of yellow perch. They came on pretty strongly, and they've really been cropped down though the last few years. They, you know, the forage, or they've ate them down. The predators have. So we did see a pretty good reproductive effort last year, so there'll be another little boost to those coming along.
Dave, one species that kind of gets a little bit overlooked on Lake Sakakawea and doesn't get a lot of fishing pressure is smallmouth bass.
Yeah, we had very good smallmouth, you know, for the last 15 years essentially, or more. They took a little bit of a hit during the drought, but yeah, our smallmouth population's in good condition. A couple of years ago we had a real boom in large smallmouth bass caught by anglers. We didn't see quite as much as that the last couple summers, so, but overall the smallmouth population is still, yeah, very good.
How about salmon? Do you have plans to increase stocking this year, keep it the same?
Yeah, we're planning on 400,000 of 2 different sizes this spring, due to the increase in forage abundance and stuff too. Yeah.
So would you characterize the salmon as strong, medium?
You know, we really don't know. Last year was a tough year for salmon anglers.
The bite.
Not just on Sakakawea, but the entire Missouri River system. And in 2014 is really when the effects of 2011 kind of come home to roost, where most of what anglers should have been catching last summer would have been stocked in 2011, and we know they flushed through the dams heavily that year. So last year was an overall fairly tough year. The fish were very healthy and big, what was there. This coming year we should start crawling out of that, I would suspect. So things should start getting better. Habitat's there, forage is there. There's no reason they shouldn't be other than their entrainment. So.
All right. Any major alterations that you see to the lake or to the river this year?
Not really. So should be a pretty good year overall.
All right. So. I'm going to ask you the same question we ask every year, Dave, of all the fisheries supervisors. If you could take a day off, go fishing, where would you go in your district, and what would you do?
Well, right now, like usual, I'd try for a pike on Sakakawea, but right now we're in between. Yesterday was my last day on the ice. I'm not going back out there, and we just don't have enough open water right now on Sakakawea. So, but yeah, I'd definitely be targeting pike for the next few weeks.
All right, so Dave, thanks. Now we head straight south from the tail race, visit with Paul Bailey. Paul is the district supervisor for the South Central District. Paul, the lower portion of the Missouri is part of your district. You've obviously already got some fishing activity going on down here.
Right, yeah, anglers are always ready to hit the water in the spring on the Missouri River system as soon as the ramps are clear, and most of our ramps are good to go right now, and anglers are certainly having at it.
All right, let's talk about the river itself, Paul. In the years past, we've had some forage issues ever since the flood. Where are we at on that?
Yeah, basically we're still dealing with some of the forage issues that are stemming from the 2011 flood, where we lost a lot of the smelt through Lake Oahe, which are a really important forage fish item in the lower portions of Lake Oahe, and that also impacted our warm water forage fish production that is our primary forage base in the North Dakota portion of Lake Oahe and the Missouri River above it. The good news out of Lake Oahe is last year we saw really good warm water forage fish production. A lot of what we call young of the year, or about 3-inch long white bass and black crappie especially, but we also saw good numbers of yellow perch, some freshwater drum. So I think anglers noticed that end of last summer into the fall, that the fish in Lake Oahe got a lot plumper than they have been in recent years. So that's the really good news, that a lot of those fish that were struggling in that 13 to 15-inch range are now getting up into that 15, 16, 17-inch range, which a lot of our anglers are a lot happier with. So that's the good news as far as our forage is concerned. The bad news is that we haven't seen a lot of forage fish recovery in the Missouri River between Garrison Dam and Lake Oahe.
By smelt now you're talking about?
Well, that would be more of our warm water forage fish also. The smelt are a big player, the smelt that are trained through Garrison Dam, obviously are a big player as far as providing forage in the tail race. But once you get down to Stanton, down to the headwaters of Lake Oahe, we're still relying on more of our warm water forage fish production, your emerald shiners, spot-tail shiners, and then the fish that are reproduced that year from, you know, small short-head red horse, white suckers, those sorts of things. And we've really been struggling with forage fish reproduction in what we call the Garrison Reach of Lake Oahe, or Garrison Reach of the Missouri River between Garrison Dam and Lake Oahe. Basically, we're still dealing with the major habitat changes that occurred during the flood of 2011, where we lost a lot of our really productive backwater habitats and side channel areas that are really important for forage fish production.
Okay, fish populations themselves are doing well, they're healthy?
Yeah, it's walleye numbers, especially in the river between Garrison Dam and Lake Oahe, have kind of steadily been declining since the flood of 2011. Again, we're dealing with those forage fish issues. It's just not as good a place for walleye to live as it was before the flood. And those fish are not growing as well. They're a bit skinnier. But I think we finally turned the corner a bit in Lake Oahe out of the worst of the forage woes that we've been dealing with since the flood. So we're optimistic we're going to continue to see those improvements in Lake Oahe, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, things start to turn around in the river above Lake Oahe.
Some of the great news in your district, and you have a lot of smaller lakes. You don't have a lot of big lakes in your district that you are in charge of, but you do have some really great fisheries.
Right, yeah, we've got a diversity of fisheries out there. I mean, with some of these lakes, I guess, are fairly large in size. You look at Alkaline Lake and Dry Lake, those are some pretty hefty sized fisheries, but we've got lakes down to, you know, Niagara Dam's only a few acres in size, so we run the gamut.
Even though they're small, there's some really great fisheries and some great species fishing.
Right, there's all kinds of opportunity out there outside of the Missouri River system.
Let's take a look at the species in your district, one at a time. Let's start with walleye.
Sure, walleye, we've really made some strides with our walleye management in recent years. We've got probably 30 or so really good walleye fisheries out there in some of our smaller lakes right now. I mean, a lot of these are lakes anglers have certainly heard about over the last few years. You know, Alkaline Dry, which I already mentioned. Yep. You know, Josephine, Jasper. Lots of good opportunity out there. But there's more walleye lakes popping up on the landscape all the time. We've been stocking them fairly aggressively in the last few years. So I guess keep your ears open, because there's bound to be some new walleye fisheries popping up this year as well.
Right, obviously the stocking reports are available either in the March-April issue of the North Dakota Outdoors magazine or on the website.
Right, that's always a great place to start, and well, anglers find out about a hot walleye bite.
Do your homework.
Right.
Yep. All right, let's move on to northern pike.
Lots of good opportunity for northern pike out there as well. Again, some of our more noteworthy fisheries like West Lake Napoleon, Rice Lake, Baumgartner, Lake Helen, Freilich Dam's got good pike numbers down there as well. So lots of good opportunity for pike anglers.
All right, you've got some of the best perch lakes in the state that you manage in your district, as evidenced by some of the perch fishing that went on over the past winter.
Right, yeah, we've got a number of pretty healthy perch populations out there. I know like West Lake Napoleon was another good lake this winter. Marvin Miller produced pretty good perch fishing, and there's a lot of other opportunities out there as well. And what really helped this winter was the good ice fishing access. So anglers were certainly able to take advantage of some of the good perch fisheries we have out there.
I want to talk for a minute about these perch fisheries specifically, Paul, because you and your crews had a project that you started, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago now, that has produced these lakes that are now just exploding with perch fishing. Tell me how that happened and what you did.
Sure. This really began in the spring of 2009. That winter of 2008-2009, with, I'm sure a lot of folks remember, set a lot of records as far as snowfall is concerned. And when that snow melted, it basically created a lot of new lakes around the state, especially in the south central portion of North Dakota. And that provides excellent habitat for perch. Perch spawn on that flooded vegetation, and then that flooded terrestrial vegetation also provides really good source of invertebrate forage, the invertebrates that feed on that flooded terrestrial vegetation. So that was a good recipe for producing perch fisheries. So we tried to take advantage of that by trapping perch out of some lakes that maybe had an overabundance of perch, trapping those fish in the spring while the females still had their eggs in them, stocking them into some of these additional lakes where they reproduced, and that's what anglers are really reaping the rewards of now.
All right, there's one more species that I want to talk about in your district, Paul. There was one real good bite over the winter, and that's crappie. Beaver Bay, of course, got pretty famous there for a little while.
Yep.
Is this going to expand? Is it going to continue to be like that? Are we going to have good crappie fishing in the river?
Yeah, well, the The optimist would certainly say, I hope so. I guess the pessimist in me says this was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Right, obviously they're there. It's just a matter of finding them.
Right, and historically that's always been the issue in Lake Oahe. There's always been crappie there, but never in the numbers that we saw this past winter. And basically these crappie were fish that were in all likelihood hatched in 2009 when Lake Oahe refilled following years and years of drought. And that provided a spectacular habitat for crappie. So a lot of these fish were able to get up into that 11, 12, 13 inch range now and produce some really spectacular fishing here this last winter.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot like we do all the district supervisors. If you could take a day off, whether it's a weekend, and you could go fishing any lake in your district for any species, what would you do and where would you go?
Well, I'd be really tempted to find some open water on Lake Oahe along the shoreline now and see if I could hook some big pike, because Lake Oahe's got a spectacular year class of pike that was formed in 2009, and a lot of those fish are in that 15 to 18 pound range right now. So numbers aren't spectacular, but the sizes of fish is really, really good out there right now.
Paul, thank you. For a complete list of fishable lakes in North Dakota and a list of boat ramps, plus stocking reports and lots of other useful information, check out the Game and Fish website along with topographical maps of your favorite lake. The website address is gf.nd.gov. For Dave Fryda, Paul Bailey, the rest of the staff here at North Dakota Game and Fish, thanks for joining us for Outdoors Online. We'll see you again next week.